The Old Man in the Cave episode was a Twilight Zone. You know, Twilight Zone treated every part of life wisely. There was always a message that we should get out of every episode. There was a town of people in the future, and they every time they had to make any kind of decision, they had to go see the old man in the cave, because they couldn't make any decisions. They were completely stupid at that point in time. It might sound familiar if you're alive in the year 2025, right? Lots of stupid people. So every time they needed to make a decision, they would go to the man in the cave, and there was a keeper of the man in the cave, and he was one guy, and you had to see him, and he was one of the town folk, and he would take care of answering any questions that the town had and any decisions that had to be made. And so you go through this episode, and a gang comes into town, because it's like post apocryphal stuff. You know, there was an atomic explosion and so forth. So there's a group comes in, and they start challenging the town. They said, well, we're in town now, we're going to take over. We're going to tell you what to do and how to act. They said, no, we got to see the guy in the cave. And then they started all sorts of ruckus. Finally, this crowd that came in goes up and says, I want to see this guy in the cave. Who is he? And he blasts past the keeper of the cave, and inside the cave is a giant computer telling him what to do. So I mention that for a variety of reasons. Number one, people are becoming stupider and stupider, and that's my observation. They seem to know so much, but just can't seem to make intelligent decisions. And secondly, they're relying on something else to tell them what to do. I'm not sure that's ever been different. I think in society for the last 1,000 years, it's probably been that way. It's just really evident today. And since there are 8 billion people on the planet, yeah, you could muster together 1 billion people easily and tell them what to do. And that's a lot. You only need 1 million. So that's the old man in the cave.
We are approaching yet another episode of Achieving Failure, the podcast where life meets nostalgia. I am your host, Chris, back again with Dennis, the most reoccurring guest.
Must be me.
And
is there anyone else here?
What we're actually doing is something that I've actually wanted to do for a long time. And being that it was recently my birthday, my father's birthday is coming up, I wanted to kind of do a 40 versus 40. So life when you were 40 versus when I'm 40. And just seeing the significance, whether it be growing up, cultural significance of environment, neighborhood, learning, school, going through life, and career, and pretty much at this point reflecting more or less not so much, we were just talking about this before, if you can go back and relive your life, or if you could tell your previous self this. It's more giving information to a younger crowd. So the way I'm questioning this is more, what life advice would you give to somebody half your age? And the same would be for me.
Well, if we compare 40 and 40, right, in time, so that for me would be 1990. And what was it like in 1990 compared to today? And oddly enough, I don't think it was any different. I think it's exactly the same, except for one thing, that as a society, we tend to amplify things. Things that were an item, say in 1990, now are like a mega item. An example would be, in 1990, we had cable television. We had 30 channels. Now we have 3 trillion channels, okay? Everybody's got a podcast. Everybody's got a movie channel. Everyone's into network TV. There's more content than can ever be consumed in 10 lifetimes. So it's not a whole lot different. If I roll it back to when I was 5 years old, we had 3 channels on television. Wow, that was a lot. That was a lot of entertainment compared to what existed prior. So it's an amplification factor. Also, stupidity has been amplified. Everything that's wrong is amplified. And we can thank technology for that because we're able to communicate all these things really fast. If something ticks you off, you can tell the world how ticked off you are, and everybody seems to know about it. I'm not sure that's a good thing. I mean, it used to, gossip has been around since I was a kid. We'd sit out on my grandma's porch after dinner, and people would walk by, and my grandma would gossip with them, and we'd hear all about the neighbors, and we'd know about everything that was going on in town and up and down the street. It just took a lot longer. Personally, I think that method was a lot better because you got to see and touch and feel people and see their emotions, and it wasn't so sterilized as today. But, we had a telephone. People were on the telephone constantly. That was always a big problem. The old man worked all day, came home, and he found his wife on the phone all day. What are you doing? You're screwing around here. You should be making my dinner. How come you're on the phone all day? Right? That was a topic of many TV shows. So,
well, the gossip nowadays is more damaging because people can take screenshots and clips of
oh yeah,
said, and now they'll wait 10 years, and when you're going for Congress or even a new job, a new career, they go, oh, look, you're about to become successful. Look what I found.
It used to be that I could talk about the neighbor and gossip about his wife or him. But now I can generate a picture of that person doing something they never did and getting them into trouble. Wow, that's powerful, right? Thank God for AI. Ooh, man.
So now going to the beginning, growing up as a child, how would you think, for your experience, growing up as a child in a neighborhood, because you grew up in Teaneck, you said you grew up in Teaneck, West New York, stuff like that. How do you think it has changed versus what you see today?
Well, let's see. I got myself living crap beat out of me when I was living in Blauvelt Street area. I got the living crap beaten out of me when I was living in West New York. I got the living crap beaten out of me when I was in junior high school and in high school.
Okay, so nothing's really changed.
It's about the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the way I...
But you know what? I am so thankful for those experiences because I learned something I don't think people are going to learn today, especially young people. I finally ended all of this nonsense by pinning this guy Bobby again. He was always picking on me. I finally picked him up. I was a good size at that point. I picked him up and smashed him against the lockers, and I punched him, and it caused some blood, which was really good. Very dramatic. Not a lot of damage, but very dramatic. And now I had to go to the principal. I had the parents come in. Nobody bothered me after that.
Well, that was kind of the same thing with me because being fortunate enough to have this wonderful last name of ours, that was kind of the running joke forever.
Of course.
And I want to say it was Ryerson. I don't remember which. I mean, maybe it was 6th, 7th grade. You didn't really have too many grades in that middle school, but it was one of those days. And just like you said, just one of those days, making fun of me, picking on me, making fun of my last name, this and that. And it just wound up being somebody who was closer to me, not even the instigator, but the guy who was closest to me, started laughing. And I said, well, I guess you're it. And I just socked him in the face. And he was blindsided by it. But all of a sudden, everybody said, oh, shit, there's a fight. And everybody's crowding around. And I mean, we never actually fought, as it was more just shoving. And then they came over and they broke it up. But I mean, ever since then, from, I want to say it was 6th grade on, they never made fun of me again. And it went suddenly, from that day on, it became the last name wound up being my first name, which a lot of the military times, that's kind of how it just kind of translated. Everybody's last name was that's who you call them as. That's who you address them as. To get out of the military, and it's I've worked with you for 5-6 years. what the hell's your first name? Like, I don't even know because it was always your last name. So, um,
I used to tell people, because after a while, when you're dealing with very, childish people, it's funny. It's like a 4-year-old. They tell the same joke 100 times, right? After a while, okay, it's not funny anymore. But I always thought it was a uniqueness. It was, and it can be. I mean, you can make a strange last name into something, that's memorable. And they say, oh, yeah, I remember that guy.
Now, just doing a quick...
My name wasn't Lipschitz. I say that to me. I say, hey, it could be worse, right?
So there was a guy on my boat. His name was legitimately, he even showed me his social security card. His last name, as bad as I thought ours was, there was a girl, I want to say her name was Areola, and then this guy topped it by having a name Mycock. And I said, there's no way in hell that's your name. He goes, here's my social security card. Here's all my records. I said, it's Mycock.
Yeah, you become a better person for it. That's funny.
I said, you're either going to be recognized as the coolest guy or the butt of a running joke for the rest of your life.
Exactly.
You might as well just go into porn at that point.
Nah.
But going back to growing up, let's even talk about toys because this is more of a nostalgic kind of thing. Toys nowadays, the stuff that I would play with, I remember going to the Jersey Shore. We would go to, at that point, it was still like a dollar store, the 99-cent store, but everything was made in Taiwan. Actually, that was even before everything was made in China. Everything was made in Taiwan, and everything was cheap Chinese shit. It was all junk. It was all plastic crap that you, like, some of the cap guns, you shot it once and then the thing would fall apart.
You take it out of the package, it's already destroyed.
So, mind you, for me, I feel like I was the generation that started phasing out metal for just plastic. So while we still have those old Tonka trucks, those old yellow Tonka trucks that are made out of metal, we started going away from, now we start doing Super Soakers, which that's plastic. You start playing with dolls, which is plastic. Everything is plastic. And it never lasted because all the metal stuff, I mean, the irony of it, for being metal, you seem to not be able to find them anymore. And they still, I mean, if you go to an antique store, they're there.
Well, metal rusts. Metal becomes dirty and rusty and people throw it out. Plastic can be cleaned up, believe it or not. I mean, the little Tykes toys and things, what's the other, Fisher-Price? Those things, those are really, really, can stand the test of time. So
I feel the only thing with them is they got sun bleached. But, well, what do you think toys between my generation and
well,
your
the toys I
generation?
had were absolutely insane. I mean, I don't even think they should have been made then, let alone now. I mean, definitely, I told you about this one. It was a big thing in the 50s, Cowboys and Indians and Roy Rogers. And they, somebody made, they wanted to incentivize kids to brush their teeth. And if you were a boy, you wanted to have a gun. So why not put the two together? Let's put a toothbrush at the end of a gun. And then you could brush your teeth while you're clicking it. I'm thinking, it didn't occur to me at the time because I'm 4 years old. But I would have thought it would occur to my parents. That really was, I wouldn't have bought that, right? But sure enough, let's go brush our teeth. Oh, click, click, right? The other thing was, hey, let's buy those candy cigarettes and tell kids not to smoke. Like, I think I was a little kid and I realized the stupidness of saying one thing and doing another. I said, well, that's really dumb, All right, I'll have a candy cigarette. They were terrible anyway, the candy. But today, we don't have those things anymore. We have drugs for kids in junior high school and grammar school. We don't play with that silly stuff like candy, cigarettes now. Go for the real thing, right? It's medicinal.
Because I'm looking up the candy cigarettes. They were introduced in the late 19th century out of chalky sugar, bubblegum, or chocolate wrapped in paper and packaged and branded as so to resemble cigarettes.
Yeah.
Now, for me though, with the cigarettes, the candy cigarettes, I never really grasped the concept of it, because were you supposed to inhale the sugar or were you supposed to exhale it like you're blowing through? Because
You're
that's what
just
we used to
first
do.
of all, you're just eating it, but you want to be like daddy, so you put it in your mouth and you look cool. Maybe that's it. And then you just you desensitize the consumer, so that eventually, okay, the kid's not allowed to buy tobacco products, so we'll sell them. What can we sell them? Oh, something equally harmful, sugar. Okay, let's. You can eat sugar.
Well, that was, I always joked. I said, "Oh, dipping, doing chewing tobacco, so bad for you." So, what's the best way to introduce it? Big League Chew. Back the Big League Chew.
Oh, right.
Kind of had that aluminum. It was kind of that plasticky aluminum pouch, but it resembled
Chewing tobacco, yeah.
what was it? Red Man. It was a picture of an Indian on it, but it was shredded tobacco that before they actually came out with
Shredded,
the tins.
what do you call it? Chewing gum.
Yeah, but it resembled that. And then when you got older, they came in a pouch where you had, I think it started resembling those circular tins, but it was jerky.
Oh, really?
It would be shredded jerky, but that's when you upgraded. As you got older, you went from chewing gum to this jerky in a tin, and that resembled
The real stuff. Yeah.
the real stuff. And then by the time you're done, it's I'm doing Copenhagen. So just a quick look. This is a 1990 study found that sixth graders who ate candy cigarettes were twice as likely to smoke cigarette as those who did not use the candy cigarettes. 2007 study surveyed 25,887 adults and found out the candy cigarette consumption was reported by 88% of both current and former smokers and 78% of never smokers. So I guess they did their due diligence by hooking people on.
Well, I found out the reason people smoke is always confused and bothered me, because everyone I knew, especially back in the 50s, everyone smoked. I think it was a law that you had to. It turns out, and I learned this from Dr. Pierce, who has done extensive study in that area of cancer and smoking, that 33%, about a third of the population, have a high propensity towards smoking right off the bat. So if you were making cigarettes or tobacco products, you would be guaranteed about 33% of the population. The second 33% of the population is on the fence. They don't know. I mean, they could be coerced. That's where advertising comes in, okay, and social influence. And then there's a third that really isn't going to bother with it, okay? So what the industry did is that they worked on the second two-thirds. They worked on those that were on the fence. That was easy. And then they worked through movies and TV shows and all those things. Those are influencers, as they are today, with dope and drugs and everything. You know, everything's an influencer. We were influenced back then. We're influenced today, except now it's a mega influence. People that do things, it's done in a huge way, ways that we don't even know.
So do you think, going back 40 years, do you think there's a bigger or more influential trend, wave of trying to coax somebody to do this as opposed to back then? Because I feel like today you can go, smoking's not good for you. However, drinking coffee and caffeine is. And I feel like I can go on the internet and look it up real quick and go, well, actually research says this. Going back 40 years, do you think the influence was greater or less? Because I feel 40 years ago, even prior to the internet, and we go back 40 years, for me, it's the mid-'80s, we didn't have the internet, so you either had to do some research and read books, or if it wasn't published, it was kind of hearsay, which that was a lot of. I mean, because they said 4 out of 5 dentists recommend smoking cigarettes. 4 out of 5 dentists recommend
My
smoking
heart
Lucky.
surgeon smokes Luckies.
Yeah. Lucky unfiltered. It's just like, well,
So this is the paradox that we have today. It's been around for a while. But it just strikes me funny. I laugh when I see it. I laughed when I first saw it as a teenager. You go in the store, there's cigarettes. You can buy cigarettes. Right next to the cigarettes, in the most appropriate spot, is how to stop smoking. I thought that was kind of weird. So you got me either way, right? All you want is my money. So what do you want to do? I'm not a smoker, but you want me to be. I am a smoker, so you don't want me to be. What is it? Well, with cigarettes, I got you going both ways because you're going to get off of it and then you're going to get back on it and get it off, and then it's a diet, okay? I can sell you a diet plan 1,000 times during your lifetime. It's one of the best businesses in the world, diets. Oh, just change the name and change a couple of products. Say, oh, yeah, carrots are the big thing now, and I get you. Nowadays, it's everywhere. Oh, you're hooked on marijuana, you want to get off it. Do you have a drinking problem? Do you have a gambling problem? We can help. And by the way, want to buy a lottery ticket? So we live in a totally debauched society at this point. And what America is good at doing, and the whole world is good at doing, is just amplifying all of those things. If we can make something that tastes good and is really bad for you, can we make it really cheap? Oh, shoot. I was going to get some soda. Can we make it really cheap and really plentiful, right? So that everybody has it. Yeah.
Now looking at school, colleges being social influences, I know recently we've been watching a lot more Laurel and Hardy, a lot more Little Rascals, and I mean, you're talking early 1900s, the Little Rascals, 1930s, stuff like that. So they're all crammed. Pretty much you got kindergarten through, kindergarten through 12th grade? You got them all crammed in one schoolhouse kind of thing?
Right.
Nowadays, it's almost like it's overwhelming because now you're talking one teacher per 30 students. It's way too overly crowded in the school system.
Well, it's not overly crowded in the school system. They just tell you it's overly crowded in the school system. Is
So
1
how
to
was school- well, how was
is 1
school-
to 30 too much?
Well, when you went to school, what was your average classroom looking like?
25 or 30.
Now,
It was bigger in some classes, like a health class. It certainly was bigger in phys ed. You might have had 40 kids or so in a phys ed class. That's people griping. That's people who don't know how to teach. That's people who are moaning and groaning about the education system.
Now, real quick, do you think the educational system has helped, hindered, or has been on a downward decline over the last 40 years?
I don't think I have to answer that. I think anybody knows that we have the shittiest educational system in the world right now.
So then why does everybody cry about being a teacher? Because my argument is we don't get paid enough to be a teacher. And I said, well, I feel like it's kind of the irony of you went to school to be a teacher and you never did enough research to find out how much they pay.
Well, let's go back in time to 1950. Okay, there were plenty of radio shows before TV, and TV shows, and on a number of them there were people who were teachers in that show, and it wasn't a joke. It was a well-known fact. Well, if you're a teacher, you're really not getting paid much. That doesn't pay a lot. Okay, just understand that. It wasn't like, well, it should pay a lot. This is what it pays. So if you want to get in this teaching profession, this is what you need to do. Over the years, what has happened is it has become horribly corrupt, and unions have come in. They have created a horrible system where teachers get a lot of money. Teachers might argue that it's not enough. That's okay. But it's the union that really siphons much of that money off, and they've destroyed the way education has gone forward. It was so much better 70 years ago. That sounds like somebody griping, right? It's not, it was always better in the past. It was better in the past, without question. Where it changed was when the government and the unions started taking control of education, and when I don't have this clip, but I'm sure it's out there. The head of the teachers union said, "We don't give a shit about students. We care about our package, our salary package." That was a great statement. At least they were honest about it. So we really don't give a shit about students.
Now, do you say this like you know this from experience?
Well,
correct?
I guess you could say I have been around the educational business since 1962. How could I go back that far? Okay, no, not 62. I'm sorry, that's a little too early. I was 16 years old, so 66. Okay, when I started as in the audiovisual department of my junior high school, and we would take care of the meetings for the Department of Ed. Now, here's a 16-year-old kid not really paying attention to education, but boy, did I learn a lot. I learned a tremendous lot. And guess what the gripe was? Teachers aren't getting paid enough, and we need more money, and we need more money, and we need more money. Now, in 1966, the educational system in America was near the top. It was excellent. We were turning out students who knew facts, who had skills, who were going to jobs, who were going to college. That's no longer the case. That changed because there was a big opportunity. Everybody must go to college. Sounds reasonable. Why do we need to all go to college? Well, we need to go to college because technology and all what we need to learn is more in demand now. So we really need to get a higher level. Okay, that makes sense. So let's send everybody to college. Okay, that worked for a while, especially in the sciences and the engineering and those things. But then it got extremely corrupt in that, well, we need gender studies too. That's really, really important. Is it? Is that really important? How important is it? Is there a job there? Well, no, but we're going to make a job because the government is going to demand gender study positions. See, it's not like there's a market for it. It's not a natural thing. Even though everybody believes in nature, it's not natural. We're going to force it so that these things now are required. So it's like what happened when the New Jersey bill came out. It was or a rule. The what do you call it when you beat somebody up?
Bullying?
The bullying, yeah, the bullying rules. Well, I happened at that time to have been teaching high school, so I printed it out. It was this thick. Okay, it was huge, double-sided, this thick, and I read the whole thing, anti-bullying practices. And they had to hire 1 and 2 people or more per school to enforce the anti-bullying. When I had learned very clearly, you punch the living shit out of who's bothering you, and that stops. Okay?
Well, that kind of
you don't want to do that because that's unsophisticated.
Well, that kind of goes into the whole question of social economics, social environments, post internet stuff like that. Because again, I'll never forget when you talk about bullying. I'll never forget the day we were in Kinnelon off 23. I was at a pizza restaurant. Me and Frank were sitting there, and I was driving, so I was 17, 18, 19, and these young kids come walking in, and they must have been late middle school, maybe a freshman in high school, but I want to say middle school. They came in with bright neon pink shirts, and I guess this is a trend at this particular year. They came in wearing a bunch of them, bright pink neon shirts, and it had a big old stop sign, and on the middle of it, it said, "Bullying stops with me." Now, I mean, I'm more of a passive aggressive. I like to pick arguments, but I'm not somebody who gets aggressively physical. But I couldn't help myself from wanting to get up and just beat the shit out of that kid.
Well, because you're a human being.
Because of that stupid shirt that he was wearing. And I said, that right there, that makes me want to pick on you.
Of course. And by the way, that's not by mistake. Anything that does that is an inducement, okay? It absolutely is. And it's like the girl that had the shirt. It says, "Why are you looking at my boobs?" Right? So you had to look at her boobs to read it, and then she gets offended when this was the cause. You really are dying for attention, aren't you? That's why you do this.
So going back, we're going back and forth 40 years now. Do you think society was, as a whole, now mind you, I know we could talk about careers.
But for the bullying, I just want to kind of just close it by saying bullying, all those rules has not helped bullying. Okay? Bullying still exists, except it gets more sophisticated. So now that we have these rules, the rules are, how do we get around that? All right, guns are good. We could use guns, and we have the internet, and we have, all sorts of unique ways now. So we have not fixed the bullying problem. It's worse now than it ever has been.
Well, I was talking to a 20-year-old recently, a couple days ago, and we were talking about life in high school and how things are. And I said, it really does come down to bullying because it's no longer, oh, haha, I'm going to make fun of your last name. Now it's they take to social media and they mock you on social media where everybody can see you instead of just in the hallway. And I feel like that's a lot worse because now everybody gets to, oh, I'm going to like his message, and now you have an army behind you. But going forward to the whole social environments, do you think, and it's kind of funny going back to just relating to old, again, Laurel and Hardy 1930s environments. You have post-depression, you have post-depression, you have the hippie generation, you have like the millennials, the boomers, the new generation, you have Generation X. Do you think, as a whole, at least in America, because I was going to get to careers, because you and I both got to explore the world a little bit, but do you think, as far as like a social construct, we're better off than we were 40 years ago? Or do you think we are going down a downward spiral of just pure damnation? Because I want to say, at least back then, we were more, I don't want to say oblivious, but we were more, yeah. He had to do more. It was more naive. For me, I was able to take my bicycle and go ride and play and do things. And nowadays, I don't even know if children even ride bicycles anymore, which is kind of silly to say. But it's just like in my neighborhood, living in Vegas, I don't see kids in the street anymore. I don't see children playing like they used to.
Yeah, a lot of things have changed, not for the better, in my opinion. But part of the problem with the question is it's like Einstein. It's all relative. My answer is not going to be the same as somebody like you. I have a much wider scope to see the change, and we have a nostalgia. We say, well, it was always better when I was a kid. But to be accurate and honest, in many ways it was. Now, there was perversion and there was strange men when I was a kid, and my mom used to tell me about men that like to do things to little boys, and we got to be careful about that. And,
Because even drinking and driving back then, they would just look at you like, oh, haha, Tony's just a town drunk and he flipped his truck again. But nowadays it's...
As long as we're looking for something positive to say, there's absolutely one positive thing in that. We're never going to not drink. I mean, as a society, I don't see that happening. But when I was growing up as a teenager, I never ever remember designated driver. I never remember that ever being uttered, ever. It wasn't even an idea. It's such a simple idea. There's no technology involved. You just say, okay, Charlie, you drive the rest. I'm sure somebody did it, but nobody I knew did it. And because of that, I lost some friends. And over the years, for many years, 50 to 60,000 people died every year in America. It's better now, but it's still at about 30,000. So it's not over. And people still drink and drive. So it's gotten better. That's one positive thing we can say, and the communications on that was good. Naivete is gone. A child growing up, they're 5 years old, they're already, been indoctrinated into strangeness of sexuality. It's a disaster. So from my standpoint, I would love to bring a kid up in the 50s as imperfect as that world was. It was a hell of a lot better than
you're talking
now.
50s, you're talking still, there was a lot of segregation. So going back, life was better back then. It's like, well, you still had the whole segregation of black and whites, and there was that stigma and that post-racism. And it's kind of that catch-22. Life was better because life was a little more innocent. However, there was blatant racism. And so it's like, well, was it better or is it better now?
First of all, I don't believe that racism in the 50s was worse than it is now. I think it's worse now than it's ever been. I think it's absolutely much worse. I remember black people being friends of ours. I remember black people helping my grandma as she got older. I remember going to black people's houses. I remember going to Kentucky and meeting with people who were neighbors that were black and their kids were black, and we played, and there was nothing. There was no issue, right? Other than that, they look different. I usually don't see black kids hanging around, because we were in a white neighborhood. But there was it was no problem. Of course, there were problems. I mean, and opportunities. But today, there's deep hatred and separation, and it's. I have to tell you, as much as we realize that we need to do better, we have not done better. We've done much worse, and there's a reason for it. If you can split people into groups, you can now control those two groups, and if you can split them even more, now you have three groups to control, and that's where we're at. It's about power and control in our society.
Well,
that's different.
Well, there was always that controversy, and it was always that controversy of the deconstruction of the nuclear family. I said, once you do that, once you get rid of the mother, the father, the children, the dog, it's just, you could do whatever you want. And it wasn't so much for certain people, it was just everybody, the nuclear family as a whole. It could be any person, any race, it didn't matter, any sexual creed, whatever. They said once you deconstruct that, then you can control the children.
What's crowd control? Crowd control consists of breaking crowds into smaller pieces so that you can control each piece individually. If you have enough people, you go in there and you break those crowds first in half, then in half again, until you can disperse the crowd, right? Once you get a crowd all in one, it's very hard to deal with. Same way with the government. If I can break your family apart, I can control individually a lot better. If I can have people anti-gay, then anti-Jew, and anti-Christian, and all these different groups. Wow, man, there's a lot of jobs out there for all of that. And then we can have societies that try to go against that and say, well, we need help with that, and the government should give us some money so that we don't, where does it end?
Now, I'll throw you kind of a curveball because this kind of relates to everything, because I noticed a big diminish, but ironically, it's kind of coming back, and I'm not sure if it's in droves, but it's definitely coming back, is the virtue of spiritual and religious values, religious family values.
I'm not seeing it. Where are you seeing it?
I just hear about it.
I see.
I mean, there's still churches. People are still going to church. I mean, on Sundays, I drive past churches, and there's still cars in the parking lot, so people are still going. But you and I talked about that, and I really think it comes down to what kind of church, what kind of theme, what kind of community. Because a lot of people, like I mentioned, are 40 years ago, I mean, that was the thing to do. 40 plus years ago, everybody went to church. It didn't matter who you were. Every Sunday you went to church, whether it be all day, whether it be 2 hours of your Catholic, it was 45 minutes. I used to love that because I called it the express line. You get in, you're up, down, get communion, sit down, up, down, okay, you leave. You're done. None of this long, dragged on, hour and a half nonsense, which actually purposely, I feel like it purposely chased me away from ever wanting to attend a church ever again. Because
that's why, as a kid growing up, St. Paul's Lutheran Church had an 8:30 service in the morning on Sunday. No music, just come in, a couple of prayers, sermon, you're out. Now, that was for people who, of course, had to go to work or something or whatever they have. But it was like, okay, I did not go to church, but I got like the compact version of it, which, by the way, was the full sermon. So I thought that was brilliant. I thought it was very smart because that caters to people at different levels. And why would you not do that? If your purpose is to talk about the good Lord, why would you not want to package it for a variety of listeners? I think it was terrific.
Well, the reason I say it sounds like it's making a comeback because kids, I mean, I don't want to say kids, but people my age now, late 30s, are talking about, oh, did you go to church? Oh, I went to the Saturday evening, and so I went to the Sunday. It's like, so people are still going, and that's kind of the one thing I've been hearing a lot of is people are now going back to church, not so much, and you give me your intake on this, it's not so much to be more religious as it is to try to reform a community, because that's where you would actually know who your neighbors are. because from a comparison and a contrast aspect, living in Jersey, you knew everybody on your block. My friends would know people, and we would walk into restaurants through the back door, walk to the kitchen, and hey, Anthony, hey, how you doing? Oh, well, yeah. I go to California, and mind you, you're talking early 20s now, 20 teens, and I lived next to people for 5 years. I've never even knew who the hell they were. And you go to wave to them, and they're like, "Oh shit!" They run inside, slam the door. It's just like, well, who the hell are you? And then now that crime is becoming more, and especially living in Vegas, now that crime is becoming more rampant because you know what? It's California. It's California with all their bullshit. Nobody could tell me otherwise. It's the upbringing of stupid ass children, and it's California influx is bringing all these problems. And like I've been saying, everybody now has been leaving, so new transplants are coming in, and they're bringing that stigma of I don't say hi to anybody. So when there is problems in the neighborhood, I don't know who you are, and why should I give a shit about you? I don't know who you are. Like I don't give a shit. But I've been noticing a lot of people have been going back to church and trying to be more friendly because they want to protect their neighborhood. The people that have been there for 30 years go, I care about this place. I want to know who my neighbors are. Even if we're not best friends, I want to know who you are. And I've been noticing church is kind of that place of you put a 5-mile radius around the church. At least within a 5-10-mile radius, you're going to know somebody in that community. And that's one thing. The new thing is, it's just like, hey, listen, especially with this whole homeschooling thing is, hey, I want to do homeschooling. You got kids, I got kids. Let's start doing these schooling pods, and little by little. So I'm curious.
Well, you do talk about a progression of events that has created the current situation, and a lot of people will condemn the 50s or the 40s or the 30s and say, you know, women were home as housewives. This is a horrible thing that they were slaves at home. Nothing could be farther from the truth. Women during that period of time actually looked forward to being a housewife. They were 18 years, 19 years old. They got married when they were in 20 or early 20s or late teens. By the time they were 25, they had 1 or 2 kids. They were running a household. The old man, the dad was out working. They were thinking about buying a house. A lot of responsibility by mid-20s. Today, we're talking much higher age children, people, offspring, can't even change a frickin' tire on a car. When we're talking about, you know, young people who were very responsible. And these were hard jobs, and they needed the community of their block or their apartment building or wherever they lived. They needed the community of the church, and you hit on it. The first and foremost purpose of the church is community, okay? It's not to hit you over the head with our religious beliefs. It is community. The religious understandings come as a result of community and talking and thinking things through. I don't believe the same thing that other people in my church believe. I have a slightly different idea of what it's like. Not that we don't have a basic understanding. None of us are going to have exactly the same thoughts on it, and it's healthy to be together. So you have the church community, you have the block community, or wherever it is you're living community. What's the scenario today? I'm working extra time, I'm working hard, whatever. I got a lot of electronics. I drive home, I hit the button, my garage door goes open, I pull the car in, I close it, I'm home, I'm having a drink. I don't really give a shit about anybody on the block. That's the way a lot of people are. We don't have the same community we used to have. Part of it is age and it's people who have common interests. This block that we're on, when you grew up, everybody knew everybody and everybody was over everyone's house. Maybe there's one exception. Now it's totally different. So there's an ageism that has pervaded it. It should be better, but it's not. It should be much more of a community. And I agree with you. Maybe you can be the Chuck of your block and try to gather some people together and have a little party and pick and choose. We had block parties here years ago. It's a good thing. The community is a good thing because, you know, it's easy not to like somebody if you don't know who they are. remember the movie The Burbs, right? Um, but once you get to know them, then you could really hate them or love them. It depends.
Yeah, so that's good life advice. Know your neighbor so you can really hate them. Have a real reason to hate them.
If there's a real reason, I mean, now at least you know.
Now that I got to know you, I really, really hate you.
It's probably that it's not going to work that way. It's going to work better. Now, that the exception to that was our neighbors across the street, and we invited them over several times. And after that, we said, "Well, the wife's great. The husband, stay away from him." You know.
So career-wise, me turning 40, I wound up in a weird, strange, ironic turn of events. I always joke and I said my failures have been my greatest success because every time I screwed up and ruined my life, I escalated to another tier, a higher tier of success. So I was working at Stop and Shop, and obviously I left that, but I wound up joining the military. Got out of the military and wound up working for Home Depot. Home Depot sucked and quit. Worked at Sears. Got fired from Sears, but getting fired from Sears let me go to school, and I wound up getting my my airframe and power plants license so I could work in aviation. And then I wound up working at the bus depot, and then from the bus depot I got a DUI. I screwed that up, but however, having the DUI actually gave me the opportunity to get back in aviation. So while it doesn't work for everybody that way, not everybody's as fortunate enough as me as to successfully fail upwards, as my friend Joey would say. It has been, and it's been coincidence that every 4 years I leave my job or I change my job. So working in aviation, it's just, and I never planned it that way. It just happened to be that way. So I was working as a mechanic for an airline and did that for 3 years. Coming up on my 4th year, I was grateful enough and I had the opportunity to become a supervisor. So now I'm a supervisor. So now I'm going on 2 years doing that, but I've been noticing that every 4 years I swap jobs. Now, that seems to be the new common trend, as a lot of the new kids are doing the whole quiet quitting kind of thing where they're only doing maybe 2 years. Now, 40 years ago, pretty much you picked a job and you stayed at it. That was your career, correct?
Life was a lot different then. There was a greater stability in the economy and in the way things moved. Things moved much slower. There weren't as many opportunities. When you switch jobs, somebody would say, "Well, you were only there 2 years. Why are you leaving now?" Now, if you're at a place more than 2 years, they're going, "Why are you there more than 2 years? You should be job hopping. You should be switching your job like every 6 months." That is almost the trend, and that's how you move up. But that's only true for a certain age bracket and a certain skill set. Not everybody can do that. So there are a lot of rules that are changed. There's no one simple pattern anymore. It used to be you got out of high school or college, you got a job, you're there for 60 years, then you 40 years, you retire, you die. Okay, simple. It's not the way it works anymore. Things are so much different. So I would say that you need a base. And by the way, I disagree with your screwing up and moving up. I believe that the way you handled adversities is the reason that you were able to move up. It wasn't because you screwed up that you moved up. It was because shit happens and you were able to handle it. And I think that's a more realistic understanding of why you're where you are. And you can keep doing that and should be doing that. Every situation is an opportunity for something new and better. Or worse. Depends how you think.
So we'll take a quick break and we'll come back because I kind of want to wrap this up, but I want to talk more retirement, saving, investing, more or less looking forward towards the future and advice that you would give. Now, mind you, you have, what do you got, 35 years on me? So, well, let's say you got 35 years. So we can't really round up to 40, but we're going to say What would you say for someone who has 35 years on me? What kind of life advice would you give for the future? Just like I would say, hey, life advice to somebody who's half my age, a 20-year-old. What should you be doing? Because while you can never go back and tell your former self do this, I feel like the one guy, Tim Pool, that I always watch, he goes, you plant seeds for a tree you'll never sit under, but you're doing it for your children that they could appreciate the shade that you've created after all these years. It's, you kind of learn from your mistakes, but it's more, hey, listen, you still got time to do this. I'm on my way out. You're kind of in the middle of the road. You can still have time to do this, as opposed to where I can go, hey, I live in a new era. So, hey, the new kid, it's going to be totally different in 20, 40 years. But guess what? Do this, this, and this. So we'll take a quick break and we'll come back and we'll kind of wrap that up with some life advice. Yeah, we'll swap seats.